Last pathway. This one's easy, I promise. The fourth sympathetic pathway, the last way sympathetic innervation gets to your organs. Okay, as always, preganglionic neuron, cell body is in the lateral horn, goes out through the anterior root, into the spinal nerve, into the white ramus, and then actually all the pathways head out anteriorly except the spinal nerve pathway. So this one does too, heads out anteriorly but has not synapsed. And actually, just ignore that bump. There's nothing going on there. It goes straight to the target organ. So I lied. There is one example in which you have no postganglionic neuron, no ganglia. That is this one pathway of the ANS that goes to the adrenal medulla. The adrenal medulla is this thing right here. So the preganglionic directly signal this organ. So what on earth is that? It's part of the adrenal gland. So the adrenal gland, which is like a hat sitting on top of your kidney there. The adrenal gland actually has two portions. If you cut it, they have cross-section to here. Let me just erase this stuff. So this is the adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland has two parts. So part number one is the cortex or adrenal cortex, and that is the outer layer. So we call the outer layer of an organ the cortex, like the outer layer of the cerebrum is the cerebral cortex. So the adrenal gland also has a cortex, the outer layer. And then the middle, the creamy filling in the middle, the second part is the medulla. And that's also very common for organs to have the inner part called the medulla. So the medulla is what is being innervated by this sympathetic pathway, just the medulla. So these two parts of the adrenal gland, they secrete different hormones. These are endocrine. The cortex, you don't need to know this, but I'm going to tell you, just FYI, secretes corticosteroids. So sometimes you might have gotten an injection of a corticosteroid, say, if you have an injury. It's really common because it helps mobilize nutrients and things like that so that you can heal, and it brings down inflammation. That's not the one we're worried about. The medulla secretes different hormones. The medulla secretes epinephrine. So you think of this as adrenaline, and they're related norepinephrine. Basically, for our purposes, the same thing. So if you just knew epinephrine, you're good. What does adrenaline/epinephrine do to you? Well, all the things that are sympathetic that you think of as, fight and flight response. Basically, what epinephrine does is prolong your sympathetic response. So it's going to keep your heart rate up. It's going to keep your blood pressure up. It's going to keep your gut from doing anything. It's just going to continue what all of the rest of these pathways did. So these guys, to note that yes, they're targeting digestive system, and specifically they're inhibiting it, they're stopping the gut, raising heart rate. So this pathway will raise your heart rate, and that hormone, epinephrine, will keep it up. In addition to raising heart rate, remember this targets the lungs as well, and it opens up those airways so you can breathe easier. And let's go back to epinephrine. You might have heard of this because of EpiPens. Yes, you can inject somebody with this stuff. And EpiPens are ridiculously expensive, not because epinephrine's expensive. It's not. It's really cheap. It's the device that injects, because some of you probably know how to give injections, maybe, but your average person doesn't. So the pen itself is what's patented, and they charge ridiculous amounts of money, which is horrible because people rely on EpiPens. Why? I hope most of you are thinking things like allergic reaction. It's a very common reason. So, in an allergy, your body is, it's mounting an immune response. Your immune system's going crazy over some foreign object that's not actually harmful. It's not a pathogen, like pollen. Pollen won't actually kill you, but your immune system thinks it will. So it panics, and it'll do things like close off your airways, trying to protect your lungs so that no more of this evil pollen gets inside. And that's true of other allergies as well. It'll cause your airways to shut. And your body's trying to protect itself, but in fact, it could kill you because you could suffocate. So an injection from an EpiPen is an injection of epinephrine, and it causes a sympathetic response. Your heart rate's going to go up, your airways are going to open, your blood pressure is going to increase, and in case of a severe allergic reaction, that could save your life. So that's the same thing you do naturally when you stimulate this adrenal medulla pathway. So sympathetic will also, cause this excretion or secretion of epinephrine into your bloodstream that'll keep your sympathetic response going. Okay, summary of pathways. Oh, geez. All four start preganglionic neuron in the lateral horn. That's where you begin every single one. All sympathetic comes from there. All of those preganglionic fibers, and by that I mean like axons of that preganglionic, they all go to the sympathetic trunk, and they all get there via the white rami. Okay, then from there, that's where things turn into one of four options. Spinal nerve, you could go down the gray ramus and back to the spinal nerve. You could synapse and then go postganglionic, go to the heart and lungs. Or you could just not synapse, just keep going and find your prevertebral ganglia and then synapse, and the postganglionic would go to your digestive system. Or number 4, don't synapse at all. Just keep going out of the sympathetic trunk and stimulate the adrenal medulla to release epinephrine. So again, those 4 pathways are summarized in this table and this figure, probably in greater detail than I expect you to know. What I expect you to know, you saw in this video on the previous slides. Okay, so this is a mess. This is your book's summary of all 4 pathways. And you can just see there's just junk happening. This is useless. I'm showing you this to tell you to ignore this figure because even I'm just like mind-numbingly confused, I guess, by all these lines and what on earth is happening. So instead, use table 18.4 and figure 18.7 as a summary. Okay, very last thing in this chapter, the concept of dual innervation. So this has sort of been implied as we talked about divisions. So there's dual, 2. There are 2 divisions. We have sympathetic and we have parasympathetic. So that's our dueling. Oops, there should be an A. That's our dual. And they, in many cases, innervate the same organs, the same set of organs, different pathways, but same organs, and they will have opposite effects. That's the important thing, is that opposite effect on the organs. So, examples. Sympathetic, what does it do to your heart rate? Increases it. Your heart is pounding. What does parasympathetic do? Rest and digest. Lower your heart rate and calm you down. What about muscular activity in the gastrointestinal tract? So, your gut. What does sympathetic do? Stop it, inhibit it. Because you don't need to be sitting around digesting. You got a bear to run from. Parasympathetic, it's going to increase activity because you're eating potato chips and watching Netflix. You need, and not just gastrointestinal, salivary, tears. Salivary, because you need that to eat. Your tears, you're going to cry, whatever. That's what parasympathetic, so opposite effect. Pupil diameter. So, what's going to happen? Sympathetic, you're going to dilate your pupils so you can see the bear better. In the case of parasympathetic, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to constrict your pupils, even though you'd think you need to see Netflix better. Apparently your body doesn't think so. So parasympathetic will actually constrict or decrease your pupil diameter. That's it. That's all the concept of dual innervation is that these 2 divisions innervate the same organs, but they have the opposite effect.